so in love with you.
You guys, this is absolutely bonkers. New home builders are fixing to save the U.S. housing market. We are in a housing market right now with historically low inventory while our population is ever growing. And we have never been more desperate to get more listings. Our demand is way too high right now. So the Federal Reserve and the mortgage lenders raising the interest rates and destroying affordability is not enough for the housing market to successfully transition from a seller's to a buyer's market. So we're going to take a look at today, we're going to look at some data and we're going to talk about some opinions on why we need these new home builders so much. What happened to the new home builders that kind of put us in this situation? And third, when do I think relief will be on the way? Now, before I continue, you guys do me a favor for the algorithm, like this video, comment on it. I always learn from comments, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And also remember, I am not a financial advisor. I am an opinion sharer, a lender, a mortgage residential loan officer in the state of Texas, and a realtor in Houston. So I've been around the block and I kind of know what's going on in the ditches. So what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about why we need new home builders so much. We've lost ground. During the COVID shutdown, it essentially shut down new home builders from making it more inventory from us. So essentially, they were forced to stop construction of new home builds, which obviously made this situation compoundingly more worse. Now, obviously, guys, as you know, new home builds is essentially the only source of new homes coming on the market. That is why we are so desperately in need of these new homes being put on the market. Essentially, the resale homes and the resale listings are not enough to sustain our population growth, nor is it enough to sustain the buyers, even when the buyer demand kind of fizzles out. We need more inventory. We need more homes being built. And COVID took us way, 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 way far back as far as keeping up with that. Take a look at this graph right now from TradingView. This is going into the inventory, okay? So up here, the inventory was 1.5 million, okay? Over 1 million. This is all before the shutdown, okay? This is all before COVID. We got shut down and all of the inventory essentially disappeared. It kind of went up a little bit, and now it is once again at historic lows. Current inventories right now in the market, 868,000 homes on the market to be sold. As you guys saw, we're used to sitting at 1.5 million, 1 million. So the way that I see it is we are essentially close to 1 million homes that we are in shortage of. Now, here's a good thing about it. Over 1.85 million permits to do new homes are being constructed. They're being worked on. So that's really, really good news. But here's the thing. Skyrocketing interest rates, like I said, the lack of affordability, inflation to all the buyers, it's not enough because as you saw, we have maybe half of the inventory that we need, okay? So essentially, if things are going to get better, if things are going to transition from a seller's market to a buyer's market, we're going to need those new home builders to start building more homes. And we are in desperate need of a shift in this housing market. Now, let's talk about what happened exactly, because we shouldn't be in this situation. So the number one thing that put us back, that put us in such a need of new home builders is the lockdown, okay? When you just lock things down and when you just force people to stop working or constructing homes, that creates a massive lag. Meanwhile, the demand actually increases. So supply actually decreases and then demand actually increases. So it's a compounding thing. We cannot take lightly the effects of COVID, which is why I'm always saying this market is new. It's not like 2008. I get it, but it's still a house of cards and it's fixing to collapse. But again, the number one thing on why we're even in this situation is the lockdowns, okay? Now, the number two thing is the massive amount of inflation, not just lumber, but gas as well. There has been so much inflation with everyday household items and items that the builders need to construct homes is all inflated. And because of the drastic inflation, home builders are now having to come much more out of pocket in order to start these new builds. And they're probably a little bit nervous about passing those extra costs onto the consumer. So the number two thing, inflation has been an absolute beast on these new home builders. Now, number three is essentially the supply chain issues. We cannot underestimate how horrible the supply chain issues have been. Essentially, builders cannot get supplies fast enough to start construction, let alone cheap enough. Okay. Say they're willing to pay the inflated prices. Fine. They'll pass it on. There's a huge demand, but there isn't enough supplies to go around. What I'm going to do on point number three as well, I'm going to talk about an article right now. Okay, guys, this is from Realty Biz News, and we're going to read this. This article came out today, the 28th. I'll have it in my description below, but let's read this right now, okay? And I think they are going to really bring the point home that I'm trying to make. Here we go. With resale inventory so low and rental occupancy rates high, the new home market is close to the only game in town, Wolf said in an interview. The problem is the new home market is running into its own inventory shortage as well. Home sales would be higher if we had more homes for sale and more builders willing to sell them. But for now, the ongoing material and labor shortages are holding the market back from full potential. Let's go on. Higher home prices and rising mortgage rates also may start to sideline more potential buyers. The median sales price of a new home jumped 10.7% from a year ago, reaching 400,600 in February. The average sales price was 511. The new homes prices have increased 31%. So guys, that also brings me into number four. One of the reasons why we're in this situation because of the lack of building. Number four of that is the labor market has been absolutely horrible for anything construction or new home builders. Now, again, this is my opinion, but I believe the normal worker has gotten lazy and has kind of sat back for the last 2 years and collected stimulus or unemployment. Okay. I can't say that for sure, but what I suspect will happen is as we go on throughout this year, and if a recession hits us, we're going to be teaming with employees again, and new home builders are going to be off to a great start. Either way, you guys, everyone knows this. We need our laborers again. We need the laborers to get back out there and the workers and the contractors to get back out there and to start building. So, which brings us to the next question and to the next point. When will relief be in sight? Now, here's what I believe as far as when relief will be in sight. I'm saying the fourth quarter, probably towards the end of the fourth quarter of 2022, we are going to start seeing new home builds in a plethora once again back on the market. And in turn, what that will also do is I believe we're going to have more buying opportunities and buying incentives. Once again, essentially what has to happen is the demand needs to go down and the supplies need to go up. And that is what we're seeing in this market right now. I believe that the market right now is in a transition out of a seller's market into a buyer's market, or at least a lot of people are pushing it that way, right? With the raising interest rates and things like that. But also, the reason why I think Q4 is when we're going to have the relief is the recession. I believe a recession is going to hit Q3 of this year. And once a recession hits, it's going to put a lot of pressure onto the job market. And there's probably going to be a lot more people taking their employment opportunities seriously. Whenever there's a plethora of jobs, workers can kind of get away with certain things. But when there's hardly any jobs, like in 2008 and 2009 that I went through, there is a ton of workers for every single position. So if a recession hits, it's going to give the new home builders a lot more workforce. The other thing I see happening in Q2 is essentially a rug pull from the Federal Reserve. I believe that they're going to raise interest rates substantially, and that by raising the interest rate substantially, it is essentially going to slow down the buyers that are qualified right now. And a lot of the buyers that were barely qualified are going to be out of the market. So I believe going into this Q3 and Q4, there's going to be much less demand from people because essentially a lot of people got used to very cheap and even free money. And what I also believe is in Q3, we're going to start seeing the fear of missing out and the emotions leave the market. So I see a lot of things happening right now, you guys, all at once. It's going to be very interesting to take note of all these things and just really just watch how they're going to play out, because again, there's a lot of different things happening from all over the place. That's why I continuously tell you guys, empower yourself through education and then set up yourself appropriately so that you can get ahead in this housing market. Now, here's my overall opinions, you guys. I'm going to call this, I can see the end of this year, Q4 of this year, I can see new home builds being cheaper than they are now. Mark my words to that. Reference this video again. New home builds are going to be cheaper than what they are now. Also, I believe in Q4 of this year, like I said, we're going to have those buyers incentives back. You're probably going to be able to buy a house and get the closing costs paid for. If you're an agent, you may get a bonus for selling the house, but that's going to happen in Q4. Now, remember what I'm saying. Essentially, Q2 of this year, quarter two of this year, interest rate hike, okay? Sudden surge of interest rates, essentially a rug pull by the Federal Reserve. Q3 is when a lot of the fear is going to leave the market and a possible recession will happen. Q4, buying opportunities. So if you've been renting and you want to buy, or that you just recently sold and are renting and want to buy, hold tight. I see a lot of relief coming, and actually very quickly. I believe, final word here, that 2023 will be one of the best times to buy real estate in the history of the housing market, but we need our new home builders to give us more inventory. You guys, thank you for tuning in with me on this video. If you're out there in real estate, if you're making moves, I wish you luck and I hope you win.